So, a little while back, I got an interesting comment on one of my videos, and I asked the commenter if it would be okay to use their comment in a video. They said yes. So here it is. The comment reads, I really like the talent on screen. They got the right people to play the roles, but I'm not enjoying the story writing in the show. I'm trying really hard to separate the show from the book and enjoy it as a different thing, but it's difficult. It seems you have found a solution to that. Care to share what clicked for you? And like I said, I thought this was an interesting question, and it really felt like it was asked in good faith, which is kind of important because I'm tired of dealing with people who try to argue in bad faith. So I thought I would try and tackle this topic or this question in a video, and so that's what this video is. But of course, first, spoiler warnings. Talking about the show, of course, so the spoiler warnings are for the entire first season of the Wheel of Time TV show. And as far as the Wheel of Time books, nothing actually significant, nothing major from the books, aside from Eye of the World. But I will be mentioning minor events that range from New Spring through to the Gathering Storm, which is book 12 of the series. Oh, okay, because I'm filming this intro after filming the rest of the video, I'm also going to be spoiling stuff from the 13th Doctor's era of Doctor Who, and from The Color Purple, both the book and the movie. So, you've been as warned as I can give you. And with that out of the way, let's go.
Let's be nerdy, babe. Let's be nerdy, let's be nerdy. Let's be nerdy, babe. Let's be nerdy, babe. Let's be nerdy, let's be nerdy, babe.
So, in thinking about this topic and talking it over with some friends of mine, like Bodi from Just Somebody's Opinion, great guy, great YouTube channel. Go watch his stuff. And Bree, some of you might know her from Discord or Twitter. And if you watch my last Wheel of Time video, she's the best-selling author I talked about, the one who sold over 1 million books. And talking with both of them actually helped me organize and perhaps solidify my thoughts on this. And so I'm going to go through a series of things that I know help me to watch the show and enjoy it as a book fan. But of course, my Bonafides. Because I know certain people will insist that if you like the show, you obviously have not read or do not care about the books, which is nonsense. But, okay, I mean, my Bonafides are going to be nothing more than me saying this, but whatever. This is just a true fact about me. I love these books. I have been reading and rereading these books since the 90s. And, like, for example, I have on more than one occasion accidentally used a Wheel of Time expletive in real life, much to the confusion of the people around me. I love these books so much that I actually have trouble reading other fantasy series that take place in anything that remotely resembles the setting of the Wheel of Time, because it just makes me want to go back and read the Wheel of Time. The way I described it to my sister, Tori, who I interviewed on this channel a little while back after she watched the show, is that it's not that I think other fantasy series are bad or that I don't enjoy them. It's like going to a restaurant and they have mac and cheese on the menu, so I order it because I like mac and cheese. And then I take a bite, and maybe it's good. It may even be delicious, but all it does is make me want Aunt Pat's mac and cheese. Like my Aunt Pat, or my sister and I's Aunt Pat. That's what I feel like when I try and read other fantasy that in any way reminds me of Wheel of Time. I read it and it just makes me homesick, if that makes sense. Like, is that the right word? It just makes me want to go back to the Wheel of Time. All that to say, I love the books. I am quite attached to the source material for the show. There are passages in the book that I can quote. I am a Wheel of Time book fan. But I also really enjoy the show, despite the fact that it deviates from the source material sometimes quite a bit. I really do like it. I may even love it, but I feel like it's a bit too early to be, dropping the L-bomb on the show yet. I know that there are things about the show that I do love. So how do I do that? Okay, so let's go into how this works for me. And obvious qualifier, this is what works for me. It may or may not work for you, but I've got a few points in here, so maybe, as that commenter asked, if one of these doesn't click for you, another one might. Oh, and another statement that shouldn't need to be said, but I feel like sometimes nuance gets lost. If you don't like the show, that's fine, as long as you're not being racist, misogynistic, homophobic, etc. about it. And as long as you don't feel the need to try and make other people agree with you or insist that if they disagree with you, they're either wrong or stupid, that's fine. Not everything is going to suit everyone. Oh, okay. But this actually reminds me of an excellent comment on my last video that made me wish I could go back and edit the final point of my last video about opinions not being facts. In that video, I said that maybe the show, quote unquote, wasn't made for you, meaning that the show might not have been made or aimed for the market demographic that is the only demographic that anyone has cared about for so long, the demographic of straight white men aged 18 to 39. And that what some of these people might be railing against and seeing as, quote unquote, bad is not bad. It's just media that isn't made with them in mind. When I said maybe it wasn't made for you, that may have come across as almost a gatekeepy, like, this isn't for you, so you shouldn't watch it. And that's not at all what I meant. I'll talk about it a bit more in this video, but I spent most of my life watching media that was very, very much not made for me. Media that was made for that, aforementioned demographic of straight white men aged 18 to 39. But I was able to stretch myself, my perspective, find ways to enjoy a narrative that very much did not have room for someone like me in it. So even if this show or any other media is not, quote unquote, made for you, or probably a better way to put it is that it's not made with you in mind, you are not its target, that doesn't mean you shouldn't watch it or shouldn't consume it. In fact, I think it's a good thing to watch or read or in any way take in media that isn't marketed to you. I spent my life watching TV, movies, reading books that have given me a lot of insight into how straight white men aged 18 to 39 think, what they want, what their goals are, what their desires, what their fears are. It's high time some of those men spend time seeing the world from different perspectives, from perspectives other than their own. It's high time that they watched or consumed stories that center someone else other than characters who are just mirrors of themselves. Okay, back to the topic at hand. And sort of following up on that last thought. As I said, I spent most of my life consuming media that very much wasn't made for me, especially as a girl with nerdy interests. Sci-fi, fantasy, this genre just didn't do much for me as a woman, let alone as a black woman. There just wasn't space for me or someone like me to exist in the vast majority of the narratives that I took in. And as I started to understand that I was gay, those spaces became even more rare. So, what I did in my head? I fixed the stories. I would watch a movie about a bunch of manly men fighting monsters and saving damsels in distress, and I would just fix it in my head. I would make space for me to imagine myself among the manly men. And no, maybe I was saving a damsel in distress as well, who knows? And any lesbian near my age can tell you, we lived off of subtext back in the day. Whether obvious and intentional, like what happened with Xena, warrior princess, or less obvious and probably not even intended, like Seven of Nine and Captain Janeway, or Buffy and Faith. Any lesbian watching TV or movies back then, that's what we were doing. We were fixing the stories in our head to make space for ourselves in them. As another aside, because this is my channel and I can do that, for me, I think this is part of what really resonated with me with the 13th Doctor's run in Doctor Who. Her first season, to me, felt so familiar. I was seeing lesbian subtext and my brain went, yes, this is how you watch genre television. I use the subtle cues to create lesbian subtext. This is how television works. And then her second season, the 13th Doctor's second season, I was like, oh, they're pulling a Xena. They're doing it on purpose now. They're feeding the lesbian subtext beast, as it were. And then her third season comes along and the lesbian subtext becomes text. Like it was canon now. And it hit me in a weird way because, okay, I've said many times before that I think in metaphors. So here comes a metaphor. What it felt like was that I had been eating the crumbs under the table, like all the heterosexual stories. They were up there on the table, and occasionally they would drop something, like drop some lesbian subtext, and I'd grab it and I tried to make a meal out of it. And what the 13th Doctor's run felt like, or still feels like, Jenny, 13 is still the Doctor, God, I'm gonna miss her. Anyway, what it feels like is that over the course of her 3 or 4 seasons, I don't know how to call it because like her 4th season is mostly just specials, but anyway, over the course of her run, they were sort of luring me out from under the table, going, yeah, no, you don't have to eat scraps anymore. You are as deserving of having an entire meal made just for you as anyone else. Okay, sorry, I keep getting sidetracked. The reason I talked about that, though, is that I'm used to adjusting stories in my head. I'm used to creating lesbian stories for characters in my head. I'm used to having to find a space for me to exist in these worlds as a woman, as a black woman, as a plus-size black woman. And with the Wheel of Time specifically, I'm used to sometimes skimming over or even ignoring things that I just go, yeah, I don't like that. I'm just going to pretend that this other thing happened instead. And I don't think I'm unique in this. I think everyone does this to some extent. We even have a term for it. Headcanon. Headcanon can be filling things in the story that aren't explicit. Or it can be more like, yeah, I just headcanon it as happening differently. And there are things in these books, as much as I love them, that I have to headcanon away in order to enjoy the books. For example, the spanking. Yep. In my head, that's just lifted right out of the books. Like, it's just gone. Matt, my favorite of the boys, his misogyny? Yeah, that's just gone. He does not either spank or threaten to spank every woman who annoys him. And he also does not give a pages-long misogynistic rant about women. Nope. That just doesn't happen. Or the horrible characterization of queer women. Yeah, no, that's just gone. Pretty much everything about Malkier and their, what do you call it? Their mating rituals? That's all out the window, too. I'm going to take another step back and talk about my favorite movie, The Color Purple. I saw that movie probably too young. I was 14 when I saw it, and talk about lesbian subtext. That movie definitely resonated with little closeted me. And somehow my mom missed the lesbian subtext. I have no idea because it is just barely subtext, but I don't know. Or maybe she just focused on the fact that it has, like, amazing gospel music in it, and she thought that would override any sinful lesbian content. I don't know. But she had no problem with me watching that movie, and watching it over and over and over again. When I was in my, late 20s, not exactly sure, but I found out that The Color Purple was actually also a book. Don't know how I missed that information, but I had. And so I read it, of course, and the book is great. It is incredible. Alice Walker is an amazing author, but it was not the movie. The movie was what I had grown up with, and the movie was what I loved. Like, I've watched that movie so many times I could probably quote it to you. I love that movie. And the book was different. The characters in the book, they felt similar to the characters in the movie, like they were related, but they were not exactly them. I could see the resemblance, but they were not the same. However, the book, because it is a book, it can go deeper into the characters. It can get us into their innermost thoughts. And lesbian subtext? Nah. In the books, it's just text. Celie and Shug, they are a couple. They are in love. They are together. It is explicit. And what I found was that the next time I watched The Color Purple, because I watch it a lot, I love that movie, I don't quite know how to word this. I ended up, without intending to, I ended up just sort of mixing and matching things during the movie to make it even better. I kept the characters and their personalities as being who they were in the movie, you know, the characters I knew and loved or hated, because it is The Color Purple. They're not exactly all lovable characters. But things from the book that I liked, that filled in their backstory or gave us, you know, extra motivation, gave insight into their thoughts, those became part of the movie for me. And Celie and Shug became a real couple for me in the movie. I took things from the movie that I loved and took things from the book that I loved and I put them together and I made a new movie watching experience for myself. So, all that to say, I'm not separating the books from the show, really. I'm mixing and matching them. I'm using the show to make a new thing in my head. I said this in a video recently, for example, that the show centering Moraine is going to make my rereads of the books different from now on because the show has given her more depth, has given me more insight into her character than I feel like I ever had before. I always liked Moraine, loved her, but I never really thought deeply about her motivations, other than, oh, she wants to find the dragon, and then she wants to make sure he lives to save the world. Like, I never really thought about that. I never thought about her sacrifice, her life. And now, because of the show, I know I'm going to be thinking more about her when I read the books, and that literally feels like a gift to me. The show has given me a new perspective on the books. Another thing that helps me as a book lover fully engage with the show is the way that I engage with stories in general. I am very much a character over plot person. If I cannot get attached to the characters in a story, if I will just have trouble caring about the story being told. It doesn't matter how engaging or how well thought out the story is. I need to attach to characters. And hell, if the characters are good enough, the story doesn't even really have to be all that great or expansive or intricate, because I just want to be with those characters. And so if you know me, and you know my channel, then you probably know what I'm about to say. Nynaeve is my favorite character, and in the show, with the exception of one scene in episode 8, Nynaeve in the show feels fully lifted straight from the books to me. Not her plot, but her. Like, the character of Nynaeve feels the same. And so having my favorite character come alive on screen for me, even if what she's saying and doing is different from the books, I just want to see her be her. It's like an alternate universe or a multiverse thing. Seeing your favorite character in a slightly different setting is, I still want to see my favorite character do those things. But it's not just Nynaeve. Moraine in the show feels like Moraine in the books, but somehow more so. Like, she feels deeper and more thoroughly explored in the show than she does in the books. Rand, Egwene, they feel like the same people in the show and the books to me. Like, they just do. Of course, there are other characters that don't. Like Tom. Tom in the show, to me, feels like a completely different person than Tom in the books. I love Tom in the books, and Tom in the show, I don't know yet. I like him well enough, but I don't know him well enough to say whether or not I love him. But he is an interesting character. I am still invested in who show Tom is, and he's fulfilling the same role as Tom in the book, so I am intrigued by that. Matt, too, he's also undergone some rather significant character changes that I admit I feel a little ambivalent about. Not mostly, like, I'm sort of 80-20, 80% being like, yeah, no, I get it, 20% being like, but my Matt, because I kind of miss my Matt, but so far I'm okay with it, because I think he will become my Matt later on, and I think they did need to do something with him early on, because Matt kind of doesn't really become a fully fledged 3-dimensional character until book 3, so I get the changes that they've made to him here. Oh, and Perrin. I feel like we don't know him well enough in the show yet, and there are, some things that happen in his story specifically that I don't like the Layla fridging. I'm not a fan. It's too early in the show for me to say whether or not I will just, maybe omit this from the show narrative in my mind, but I know I haven't included it in the mixing and matching that I'm doing in my head about Perrin. That's staying firmly on the show side, and it's not becoming part of this new thing that's, I'm not doing this on purpose, but it's there's a new thing being formed in my head where I'm taking the best things from the show and the best things from the book, and that has not become a part of that. So basically, for me, the characters in the show are mostly in line with their book counterparts, or I can see where they will merge with their book counterparts in the future. And because that is, to me, what is important, it makes the show work for me. My final point on this topic, and this might be the best one, and for those who are struggling, this is the point that I think might, to use that original commenter's words, might click for people the easiest. And I have to give credit to Bree in this one, because she really helped to articulate it in the best way possible. And I think I might just end up quoting her because she's so good at articulating things. I mean, she should be. She is a writer. The way she described it, the way she explained why the show works for her, and incidentally, it's also one of the main reasons that it works for me, is that it's a matter of plot versus story. And all right, here's where I get to just quoting her, because trying to paraphrase her is going to lose some of her narrative flair. So, the story of Eye of the World is basically a strange magic woman comes to a small town and sweeps up 4 young people into a larger world where one of them will find out that they are actually the Dragon Reborn, and others will face challenges that force them to confront various things about themselves or change in some ways. Egwene realizes she can channel, be strong. Nynaeve slams against the rock of Lan and actually cracks those walls while insisting that she just wants everyone to go home. Mat gets cursed treasure brain. Perrin struggles with violence versus peace and who he is. All of that she just described there, that's story. Plot is the stuff that happens in order to move the story along. To once again borrow directly from Bree in the way she described this, if the story is about a trip from Los Angeles to New York, the plot would be how you take that trip. Do you ride bikes? Do you take a bus? Do you drive? Do you hitchhike? Again, quoting Bree, Mat gets cursed treasure brain. That's his story. Does he follow a whistle outside, or does he tell Mordeth that he will help carry his treasure around? Which one of those things he does, that's plot. And yeah, this is pretty much my perspective as well. In fact, I actually said as much in that interview that I mentioned before that I did with my sister a few months ago.
Let me ask you a question. Is the book and the show close, or is sometimes they have to rewrite the show?
I think the characters feel the same to me. The characters, which is always the most important thing to me, they feel exactly the same. They are taking them on the same journey, they're going in the same direction. It's just maybe they're taking a more direct path because they don't have 1,000 pages to do it. So, and once again, I'm just going to pull straight from my convo with Bree here. She said, the reason the show works so well for me is that I am invested in the characters and their emotional journey, and that core is still happening. I don't care if they're on a train or a boat. In fact, not knowing how they're going to get there is part of the fun. And yes, I've said this for a while, since before the show came out. As a book fan who knows where the story is going, I'm also loving that I don't know all the beats that the plot is going to take along the way. I love that I can now speculate and wonder, and that the show can actually surprise me. I still trust that the story is going to be faithful, but deviations from the plot don't bother me because the plot is not the core of the books to me. Character and story are. So, yeah, those are all the ways that I use as a fan of the books to watch the show. And honestly, thinking about this, in such detail has been really interesting. So I just want to thank that original commenter. Thank you. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. If you are a show and a book fan like myself, how are you making it work for you in your head? Is there anything that you're doing that's different from me? Let me know in the comments below. If you're not a fan of the show, that's honestly fine. There are plenty of places on the internet for you to talk about that, but just gonna say there's really no point in coming into the comments of people who like it and trying to convince me or anyone else in the comments to agree with you about a television show. Okay, but anyway, if you like my content and you want to support me, I've got a Patreon, which will be linked in the description below, so you can check that out. My patrons, I've said that before, I'm going to say it again, you really do mean so much to me. You literally keep the lights on. You have no idea how much your support means to me. It really does help. So thank you so, so much. And with that, I will end this here. So please like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!